Have you ever looked at something seemingly small, like a doll on a toy store shelf, and suddenly seen the bigger story it's telling? This week I talked with Jodi Bondi Norgaard, author, speaker, and creator of the Go-Go Sports Girls, a line of empowerment dolls designed to challenge the narrow messages aimed at young girls. What started as a frustrating moment in a toy aisle became a years-long mission to reshape how we think about gender, confidence, and the values we pass down, often without realizing it. In our conversation, Jodi shares the resistance she faced from the toy industry, how early messaging shapes our beliefs about ourselves, and why advocating for change, even when it's hard, is always worth it. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Meninger, and as an executive coach and former high-tech leader, my personal mission is to help professionals overcome imposter syndrome so that you can advance your career with confidence. Each week, I interview a new guest who brings a powerful perspective to this conversation, including personal stories, best practices, and new insights. The more we talk about this issue, the more we destigmatize imposter syndrome, recognize that we're not alone, and empower ourselves to access the tools and resources that can help us and those around us. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing with others you think would benefit from this conversation. Welcome, Jodi. It is so great to have you here today. I would love to start by inviting you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Kim. I'm really excited to chat with you today as well. And I'm Jodi Bondi Norgaard, and I am the author of a new book that came out in January, More Than a Doll, How Creating a Sports Doll Turned into a Fight to End Gender Stereotypes. I'm also the creator of the Go-Go Sports Girls dolls and books. They're girl empowerment products for girls. I launched in 2009. And my book is really about my journey of sounding the siren that gender inequality doesn't start in our teens or in our 20s. It starts the moment a child can hold a toy, a book, or watch a screen. So basically, through my journey, and it was so difficult, I had so many ups and downs and so many, it felt like mountains to climb. And anytime I got to what I thought was the peak, it was a definite false peak. So it is just offering in the back of my book, I have some tools on, how we can get past this, but there are certain reasons why, we're told at a very young age, to be that good little girl, to, sit quietly and to follow directions, but that doesn't always pay really once we get into the business world or into our careers, that good little girl just doesn't work anymore. So we're kind of set up to question ourselves and think, it must be me.
You're absolutely right. And I think that obedience that you're describing serves us really well in school, where the purpose is to follow the rules and learn and do things the way that other people tell us to, right? Like make the teacher happy. But then when we go out into the workplace and our managers are looking for our ideas and the goal is to sort of innovate and challenge the status quo, we have not been given a permission structure throughout our lives to do that. And I often think about the fact that there's no equivalent to boys will be boys for girls, which really implies like, there they go again, breaking the rules, getting in trouble. It's what boys do, right? But girls, we don't have that leeway.
Right. We have to walk a very fine line. And so one of the things, and maybe you and your listeners will, relate to this, is that when I was younger, I was very well rewarded for my compassion, my sensitivity, my kindness towards others. And, I was that kid in school where a new kid would come into, our class and my teacher would say, Jodi, would you make sure you sit with her for lunch, or would you make sure he is included in recess, right? So I felt very confident and proud in that. But once I got into high school, I began to hear I was too sensitive. I was too nice. And even my high school guidance counselor told me I was too kind and sweet to go to college and into business, and I was better suited as a secretary or somebody else's assistant just because of that kindness. And I think in our society, we recognize that aggressiveness, that assertiveness as being leadership skills. And yes, okay, but it also can be the empathy and the compassion and the confidence in that realm, not just in, the aggressiveness of, tackling some kid or, doing weird things on the monkey bars and, that they say, go, 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 little boy, and to little girls, it's like, oh, be careful, sweetie, right? So, I do feel that there's this cultural shift that needs to take place. And sometimes I see it. I saw it, much more, a couple of years ago, and now we're kind of fighting again to, see the benefits in that empathy and that sensitivity. But we all have our strengths, so we shouldn't just push, this the sweet kid to the side, saying, yeah, you don't give value just because, you're not aggressive or assertive.
Absolutely. And I'm curious because you took a unique approach to addressing this issue through dolls, right? How did you get there?
Well, there were many situations in my life that preceded like the straw that broke the camel's back, to say, but there are many situations in my life, big and small, that shaped who I am and how I feel about my gender issues, my own personal experiences with gender inequality, sexism, that has led me to know the importance of girls knowing what their minds and bodies can do versus what their bodies look like.
Mm.
So, so all, a lot of times in life we go through and we see something that's wrong and we just push it aside. And one of my first realizations of this marketing, like when my kids were younger, I have two boys and one girl, and my daughter's in the middle. And when my kids were around that age of 6, 7, and 8, I started to see this discrepancy in products marketed to girls and products marketed to boys. I started to see products marketed to girls associated with appearance and attractiveness, and products marketed to boys were associated with violence and aggression. My boys were never violent or aggressive, and I didn't want to encourage that. And my daughter was very smart, and I didn't want her to think that all of a sudden she had to, concentrate on her appearance. So one of my first realizations, and this is not my aha moment, but it kind of led me to, it just really opened my eyes. It was like a light bulb went off, was when I was in a toy store looking for a science kit for the kids. It was summer. They were not with me. I was by myself, and I was immediately annoyed because there was a girl science aisle and a boy science aisle. And I thought, seriously, like, when did science now become gender specific? But I didn't make any waves. I said, okay, that's fine. I go down the boy science aisle, and I found the volcano. The packaging looked incredible, right? The boys are having so much fun. The one that you put in the vinegar and the baking soda, it's exploding. There's kids have goggles on. I'm like, okay, that's a really good outdoor option. But I'm now curious, what is down the girls' science aisle? Well, sure, you can be a scientist, but you can make your own fingernail polish, your own hair scrunchies, your own makeup, your own perfume. Again, it all revolved around appearance. So it was like, I felt like for the first half of my life, I was just living in a dimly lit room. And I always thought, it has to be me, right? Maybe I just need to buck up. I'm starting to see things that are, not equal, but it must be me, right? Like like I said, I must have to buck up. I must have to change to fit in. And I think for far too long, women have been told to lean in, to change, to fit in. But what I've realized is that we're not broken. It's our culture that's broken, and it's our system that needs to be fixed. That is, as I'm going through my journey, that is what the realization, like once I saw the volcano, the science kit for kids, I'm like, no wonder we have these issues. No wonder there are so many self-help classes for women, self-help books for women, because we're giving these confusing and conflicting messages starting at a very young age. So now to my aha moment when I was with my daughter, who at the time, Grace, who was 9 years old, she had just gotten done playing soccer. So she was still dressed in her uniform with her cleats and her shin guards and crazy messy pigtails. And I tell you that because she looked like a normal kid on a Saturday afternoon. When I had one of those panicky parent moments and we're running up and down the toy aisle frantically because she needed a wrapped birthday gift for a party she was attending in 30 minutes, right? Like we've all been there. And so a line of dolls just stopped me in my tracks. I look at the dolls. It was a new line of dolls that had just come out by the guy, Ty Warner, who did the Beanie Babies. So it was like, like it was a big display. And I was like, what are these dolls? They had on short skirts, crop tops, belly button ring, big hair, lots of makeup. I look at my normal looking kid. I look at these dolls. I pick up one of the dolls and the name on the hang tag was Lovely Lola. I'm like, what in the world are we marketing to girls? I'm so done with this. So I pick up another doll and the name on the hang tag is, Dazzle and Destiny. And then there was Sizzle and Sue and Cute Candy. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I am just out of my mind. I'm literally having a meltdown in the toy store. So I bought the doll, as I'm scolding all the sales people, just like, this is crazy that you're marketing sex to girls. And they're like, yeah, I'm 16. But I brought the doll home to my husband and I said, listen, I'm sick and tired of these negative images that are marketed to girls, and I think I can do something about it. And I think I can create a positive image product for girls that encourages them to be healthy physically, mentally, and emotionally through sports and physical activity. So that's what set me on my path and on my journey. And what I thought was, wow, I've got the next best idea, turned into an incredible battle that I was beginning to fight.
Really? Uh,
I
ugh.
still do. Yeah.
Well, I can completely appreciate what you're saying too about the difference in the way that toys are marketed to boys and girls. I only have boys. I have two boys, and we don't have anything pink in our house. And it was always, like you said, fighting or things like that. So it's really hard because you feel like in either direction you are fighting the stereotypes, right? I wanted my kids to feel like it was okay to have a doll or that you didn't have to be violent in order to play. And we have these very strong influences because no matter what we as parents decided, they would still come and, whatever they had became a weapon, right?
I know. And it's there, kids are, so complex. And, there are, so many studies out there that say, boys will gravitate to this and girls will gravitate to this and whatever. And I get society and kids. It's just about not pigeonholing them to a certain area. And a lot of people in the toy industry will call the toy industry, that we, package childhood for kids. And so I've been really, just asking the toy industry and begging the toy industry, to give girls, something other. It's, and obviously I was concentrating on the doll category, which is one of the biggest selling, markets within the toy industry. And when I did my research, when I decided to move forward on the positive image product for girls, when I did my research, I found rag dolls, I found baby dolls, and then I found 75 lines of fashion dolls, and that was it. So if they're, so my point was to them, just, I'm not saying you don't have to take one fashion doll off the market. Nobody has to go, but let's give them an option. Let's see where this goes. Yeah, so
And
that's,
what did you get for a response?
oh, well, I'll be honest. My first sale was amazing. It was to the US Open. So I just called the United States Tennis Association one day, and I got to the right person within a minute, and then I told her what I was doing, and she said, "That's great. We'll take 500 tennis girls." And that was in 2008. And those 500 sold out in 6 days.
Mm.
And so I knew I had a good test. I knew I had a good product. I just happened to be at that US Open, and I saw little girls carrying them throughout the grounds at tennis. One time there was a little girl in the Jumbotron, waving her doll. I'm like, oh
Um,
my gosh, this is amazing. I truly have the next best thing. And that's what I thought going into Toy Fair in 2009. And I was ready, prepared. Within the toy industry, this is the biggest toy fair throughout the world. So people come from all over to look, to see, and to find the next best thing. And I was like borderline cocky. I'm like, yeah, it's me. This is me. I can't believe it was that easy, right? Like, wowza. And not so much. I had so many buyers come to my booth saying, I love your product. My daughter plays soccer. She would love Soccer Girl. And I'd say, great, how many would you like to buy? And I'd always get, oh, no, 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 no. It's not going to sell. And I'd say, why? And they said, well, ultimately, girls like fashion. Can you create a fashion doll? I'm like, that's my point. As a mother of a daughter and as a woman, I'm positive girls like more than fashion. And don't get me wrong, I love fashion. I love how people express themselves. I love how designers are artists. I think it's great. But does it define a woman?
Mm.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. So I hung in there. I mean, I can just read you some of the comments, Kim, in the beginning of because this is how I started in my introduction. So these are some of the terms I heard. Girls who play sports don't play with dolls. Girl empowerment was a trend a few years ago. It's not anymore. You need to add more blonde, blue-eyed dolls and make their legs longer. Because just on that one, I measured my daughter and all of her friends that came through the door because I wanted to make sure that the doll was in correct proportion to a little girl's body.
Mm.
So these buyers would say the legs look too short. I'm like, that's because it's in correct proportion.
Wow.
So, and then this one really kills me. Generally, kids who are active don't read. I mean, I have 3 active kids that read. Yep. And then a sports doll will never sell because girls like fashion. I said that one. Black dolls don't sell well, which was a horrible, horrible statement to hear because I had 2 black dolls within my line. To the buyers, they would say, they wouldn't sell it, but online they sold really well. So I knew they were wrong. I'm like, they were so antiquated. Boys don't read books about girls, and which is so sad. And then I love your product, but it'll never sell because it's not mainstream. It's not fashion. And girls ultimately like fashion.
Wow.
So these are from toy and publishing industry professionals that I heard all of this.
Wow.
So I hung in there, Kim, for 5 long years with not a whole lot of sales, enough to keep me going. Definitely, I just put everything back into the business, and it was kind of hard because we had 3 small kids. I was working a ton, and my husband was like, "Oh my gosh, you're not bringing in any money." And I'm like, "I know, but I just know girls and women deserve more."
Mm. It's so unfortunate when you know that something is a problem and something is like you had tested it and it had proof of concept, right? And you've got these, like you said, antiquated people making judgments. And I think that's part of when you were talking, what I was thinking about is I think sometimes, unless we think about it, we assume that the toy industry is neutral, right? And this is just another reminder that they have an agenda and that they're trying to influence purchasing, right?
Well, and they're they're wanting to make money,
Yes.
right? So they are in a wash, rinse, repeat cycle, right? So they don't have a blueprint for a sports doll for girls. They do have blueprints for fashion dolls for
Mm.
girls, right? How do they market this, right? They know how to do that. So it yeah, so they are very antiquated, and not as innovative as you would think,
Mm.
which
Yeah,
is too bad.
it is. It's too bad. It's disappointing and it's a little surprising in some sense too.
Well,
I
there are
mean,
good things too. Don't get me wrong. There are great things that the toy industry, puts out to kids. But, a lot of times, eh, boy, for instance, the LOL dolls, which came out in, I think, 2017. I don't know, having two boys, you may not be familiar with it. It was by the maker of the Bratz dolls, so MGA. And it's a privately owned company, so there are no financial records out there, except people anticipate they probably made $1 billion off of this product. But what it was, these little dolls, and it was a surprise factor. So you open the little packaging, it was like a landfill nightmare, a parent nightmare. There are all these little things, but the kids thought it was so exciting. And it won the Toy Association Toy of the Year award at 2007, I think 18, 19, and 20, around that time frame. So 3 years in a row. And it had this secret, the company disclosed a secret color change. So say, you dip a little doll in there that has white hair, you pull it out of cold water, now it has pink hair. But on some of the dolls, they didn't disclose this. It had a secret clothing change. So you dip the doll in, and now it would come out with, some came out with shackles on her wrists and ankles.
oh,
Others came out with caution tape on their private parts,
oh,
with a devil tail on her backside,
oh my
and others with sexy lingerie. So I wrote an article about it. So many people called them out on it, and they just said, they just did some, very easy, press control, and said, you know what, we just listened to what, our buyers want. And I don't know any parent that wants their daughter
no.
or son to play with this. So it doesn't only affect girls, it affects boys. So to see if little boys see this is how girls are supposed to be, like objectifying them, and that's how they treat them. And little girls seeing that this is what they're supposed to do. So anyway, they ended that, but I just can't imagine people sitting around a conference table and saying, yeah, that's a really good idea.
Wow.
So sexy dolls are alive and kicking, and there are, other bad ones, but there are also good ones. People, they do try. I don't want to say, there aren't good toys out there, because there definitely are good toys out there. There are just some that stand out, and you just think, why? You would never give your kid anything harmful to ingest physically, or that would hurt them somehow. But what about your child and their mental health?
Yeah.
Isn't that something too?
Yeah. I'm curious, because you have two boys as well, what was the conversation with them as you were doing this, and how have they internalized, or like, how has their life been affected by the work that you've been doing?
Well, I think I would like to say that they are the greatest feminists out there, and they understand the inequality that women face. I remember my oldest, when he was at a friend's house, and we live in a town where you can ride your bike everywhere, and his friend lived about, I don't know, maybe half a mile away, and it was 10 o'clock at night, and he's like, Mom, can you come get me? And granted, he was 14 years old. And I said, just take one of their bikes and ride home. Who cares? Just ride home. And so he does. And then my daughter is at a friend's house, and, she's 13 years old, and 2 blocks away and it's 10 o'clock at night. And she's like, Mom, can you come get me? I'm like, yes, absolutely. Do not walk home. Do not walk home. And I mean, we live in a very nice area, and my son said to me, he's like, I don't understand. I said, honey, like women are just victims so often. They're just victims. And, when the statistic holds true, 1 out of every 3 women are, sexually assaulted. And that's not okay. Me being one of them. And it's just not okay. So, anyway, I think that they do understand, how dangerous it is for women and girls versus them. They don't have to worry about where they run during the day. They don't have to worry about going into a parking garage and having your keys between your fingers and just kind of looking behind your back and running in and locking the doors right away. As women, we know that. There's something I write about in my book too, it's a story about a woman in London, and there was a serial rapist. And this was just a couple of years ago. And so, in this particular area, they advised all the women to stay inside at nighttime to protect themselves. Okay. And she just fought back and she said, absolutely not. What has to happen is that all the men have to stay inside because it's one of you.
Yes.
It's not us. But as women, we're so used to thinking, yes, I have to protect myself. I have to protect my girls. I have to protect my friends, right? Yes, we have to, because that's what we've been trained to do. So the pushback this woman received with the hate mail, the death threats that she received online because of her idea was, it was horrible. But wow. I agree with that. It's just like, why do we have to stay inside? You stay inside.
Yes.
You all figure it out because I'm tired of figuring it out.
Exactly. So you mentioned doing the work with the dolls for 5 years. Did you bring that to an end? Where are you now with this journey?
Well, after that 5-year period, I had a crazy opportunity to pitch to 3 Walmart buyers. And this was in 2000 and, oh my gosh, I'm at 13, 14. And I had 5 minutes. And after the 5 minutes, they said, this is a winner. If you can write 6 books to go along with 6 of the dolls, package them together, we'll put them in Walmart stores. So that was incredible. And I loved working with Walmart. They were awesome. At least the headquarters was awesome. They were awesome. They're super great people. The stores were a different story working with them, but I loved working with Walmart. I still have a good relationship with them. And that's what kind of got the ball rolling. By 2016, I was invited to the White House under the Obama administration to participate in conferences on breaking down gender stereotypes in media and toys. And then my business was acquired in 2017. And then I thought my story ended there. The company is called Jazzwares. It's a big company down in Florida. But they were redoing the product. They took all the product off just Walmart store shelves, and they were going to redo the dolls, right? And I get it. They wanted to do more of a hard body, which is the plastic versus the plush dolls that I had. That just sells better in mass. So I thought, okay, they came up with a great idea, a great plan. And after 18 months, they never brought it to market, and they decided that they weren't going to go forward with the brand because they hired 2 new guys, and I convinced one of the guys, I had to repitch it to them. I could convince one guy that it was a great idea, and another guy was like, no. He said, this isn't going to work because we do not have a true blueprint to launch a true girl empowerment product. It's never been done before. So they did the right thing, and they returned the intellectual property to me. But that's when I realized my journey's been more than a doll. And that's when I started writing my book. And then, of course, COVID hit, and, that's a great time to write a book when you have nothing else to do. And yes, and then I speak all over the country on the importance of empowering women and girls and gender equality. And then I ended up working with the Gender Policy Council with the Biden administration. So in the Gina Davis Institute, we did a study called Equal Play, and it's great. It's on my website. But it just shows that it's just not the toys that influence our kids. It's the marketing, it's the advertising, it's the voiceovers. For boys, it's generally more aggressive and fun. And then for girls, it's calming and nurturing and flowers. And, so we need to recognize all of these things that go on. And I think my book does just that. It's actually, I feel like I'm handing out flashlights. So our dim rooms just keep getting brighter and brighter, and we understand the inequality that we face.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. And I love what you're doing. I think it's such a unique way of, there's so many of us trying to tackle this problem from so many different angles. And I think it is a cumulative experience, right? There are, the problem is so deep rooted and so pervasive, and just trying to do your part right based on your unique experience. I love your story. I truly could talk to you all day. I have so many follow-up questions, but in the interest of time, I'm sure there are others who feel the same way. And I'd love for you to share where we can find your book, where we can find you, stay connected, and follow the work that you're doing.
Yep, you can go to my website and find my book, or it's on Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, Books, Bookshop, Books A Million, wherever you get your books, it's there. It's audio as well. I do not do the audio. I tried. It's not my strength. I'll be honest. So you got to know what your strength is or what your strength is not.
That's right.
So she did a great job. Yes, my website, you can always contact me through there, ask questions, follow me on Substack, social media. I write for Ms. Magazine. And I love the support. It's hard. It is. Sometimes I just wrote an article for Ms. It was just last week, and just about I'm tired, right? But it's okay to rest when we're tired, and it's not okay to give up. Mm-hmm. So I will never give up. But I did rest for the month of July. I'll be honest, I was pretty mentally frazzled, and a lot of it had to do because I did a book tour. So I was just, and everything else that's going on. I was just, wow. So it's okay to rest, but it's not okay to give up.
I love that. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, for the inspiration that you're giving all of us. I really appreciate it, Jodi.
Well, thanks for having me, Kim.
Thanks so much for listening to the Impostor Syndrome Files. If you would like to continue this conversation in a safe and trusted space, I would love for you to join my virtual discussion group every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. For the past several years, the group has been limited to women, but it is now open, regardless of gender, to anyone who is interested in exploring and troubleshooting common workplace challenges, building better awareness of ourselves and others, and becoming more inclusive allies at work. Check out the show notes for more info on how to find us, and please join us next week for another episode of the Impostor Syndrome Files.